Welcome everyone on behalf of the Center for Environment Education and CE Academy to the first session of the course on ecosystem restoration. And this is a part of a larger campaign that CEE is involved in. It's called Act to Restore, which is uh, focused on the ecosystem restoration and looking at ways in which all stakeholders can participate in the process. So can you go to the next slide, please? So can we go to the next slide? So thank you. So the Act to Restore campaign is in as I mentioned, it's campaign which focuses on the key ecosystems and on people's initiatives, which all different stakeholders can take in the act of restoration. Just to kind of talk about restoring ecosystems and its importance to us, it's basically it's looking at recovery of ecosystems which are degraded. We are looking at conserving ecosystems that are still intact. So also the benefit to us is that the healthier ecosystem with rich biodiversity would yield greater benefits, such as more fertile soils and larger stores of green, and they act as larger stores of greenhouse gases. We also need to look at when we restore ecosystems that are large or small, that protects the livelihoods of people who are linked with those or living in those ecosystems. And it also helps in regulating disease and reduce the risk of natural disasters. In fact, restoration can help us to achieve all of the sustainable development goals. So the Act to Restore campaign is being launched, or was launched on June 5, and will be on for the next 6 months during this year. Yeah, please. Next, please. The campaign focuses on these particular themes: oceans and coasts, farmlands and grasslands, mountains, forests, freshwater, and urban areas. It's designed as a monthly campaign, and there are these themes on which various activities will be conducted as part of the Act to Restore campaign. Next, please. What's up? Let's take time. All right, so the activities would be in these major three areas. The workshop series, the first one, the webinar happening today, is part of that, the workshop series that we plan to host on all different types of ecosystems. And then we also are looking at involving our school networks and youth networks with a focus on these various ecosystems, involving them, involving everyone to competitions, that includes blogs, debates, etc. Nature education and awareness programs, so storytelling sessions. And so it's not just that CE will do it, but we would encourage everyone to actually contribute to it and keep us in and join hands with us in taking up this campaign. Next, please. So there are these 6 themes, and we also have created these posters. Every ecosystem would have a poster. You will see the oceans and coasts one later in the presentation. And these posters you could download and also put up in your, or use them for your own work and campaigns. It does have aspects of choices, voices, and actions that you can take in line with the objective of the campaign. Next, please. Yeah, so just to give a background, this academy has been envisioned with the aspect of looking at transformative learning, which focuses on getting or changing mindsets and helping people make connections and understand that we are all part of a larger system, and therefore what we do would impact someone else and impact the environment. It has the education for sustainable development is at the core of the way the Sea Academy would offer its courses. The ecosystem certificate, restoration certificate course is the first of its courses, which is into 7 modules. And today's is the first module that we are starting out with, which is the coast and marine ecosystems. It will be followed by forests, then with forests followed by the natural ecosystems, grasslands, farmlands, and the freshwater ecosystems and urban. So these are the 7 modules. Each one would be for 4 sessions every Saturday, 1 hour. And the first course we hope that many more people who have not registered yet, we encourage you to register for the entire course or for modules which you find interesting. So I would hand over now to Sujit to talk more about the coastal and marine course, and then take you through the rest of the day.
Thank you, Madhuvan. So good evening to all of you. It's a wonderful evening today. I'm Sujit Dongre. I'll be the module coordinator for ocean, marine and coastal certification course. I will be sitting in the place called Goa. It's a wonderful land where you have oceans, marines, and also the coastal areas. Today, this is a very important day for all of us to start with understanding what this marine and the coastal ecosystem mean for all of us. What is the ecosystem benefits that we are actually deriving from this major ecosystem? We have 2 eminent speakers speaking about this topic, Mr. Sajan John and Dr. Bhavan Ingole, who have worked in the field of marine biology for last several years. Happy to have both of them to speak to all of us on the subject of their expertise. So before I basically take you all through to Sajan John, to listen to him and understand the importance of marine and coastal ecosystem, I thought let us play a game. The game is basically a quiz, basically just to understand how much we really know about this ecosystem. Quiz means I'm not taking you through several questions, but 1 or 2 questions. Let's answer those 2 questions, and then I'll take you to Sergeant John for a detailed discussion about introduction to marine and coastal ecosystem. May I request Jairaj to please show the quiz? Yeah, this is the question. I think you have about a minute of time. Please go through these 2 questions and try and answer them. The first question is, this is the Blue Flag awarded beach in India. There are options are Miramar Beach in Goa, Shivrajpur Beach in Gujarat, Kolam Beach in Tamil Nadu, Bangaram Beach in Lakshadweep. The second question is, mangroves have a greater carbon sequestration potential, whether it is true or false. Your time starts now. Please answer these 2 questions.
Started receiving responses. Okay, we just have 28 people who have still voted. We can, Shiv, how much time, Sujit, you want to give? We need to have more people voting, please.
Please go through. And I'm also very happy to have so many people from the College of Forestry. And a friend of mine, Dr. Ramesh Rathod, is also there. For you students, it will be a very interesting session.
We would like you to join the course.
Yeah, I think you should also join. Yes. Thank you, Rodward, for encouraging your students to join this course.
Okay, ending the quiz.
Yeah, ended. How many, will you be able to show us the result? Wow. 46% say Shivrajpur. The correct answer is Shivrajpur, yes. And 95% say yes, it is wonderful. Yeah. The second question, 95% people have given a correct answer. 5% have said is the wrong answer. Yes, Blue Flag Beach in India is the Shivrajpur beach. And mangroves really have a greater potential of carbon sequestration. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce.
Thank you, Jairaj.
Thank you, Jairaj. Now I would like to introduce my friend, Sajan. I know Sajan for last 15 years. We work together on a small research project on Goa. Mr. Sajan John has a master's degree in marine biology, and he has joined WTI, it's Wildlife Trust of India, in the year 2014. Currently, he is managing marine projects in WII, that is including the whale shark conservation project along the Gujarat coast, Gujarat, Kerala, and Lakshadweep. The coral reef recovery project in Mithapur. Apparently, Mithapur is very close to Shivrajpur in Gujarat, where our Blue Flag Beach is located. He's also working on the mangrove conservation project in North Kerala, and mobile distribution survey along the Indian coast. Thank you, John, for Sajan for joining us. And Mr. Sajan is speaking on a topic, introduction to the coastal and marine ecosystem in India. Sajan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sujitda. It's really nice to be here, and it's really great and I would like to kind of just congratulate CE for organizing this campaign, aligning with the UN Decade of Restoration. And one important thing is that the coastal and marine habitats require lots of attention, and if you are doing active restoration to increase the acreage of these critical habitats, you also should have a workforce, so trained workforce, I'll say. So this attempt to train the youth about the importance of ecological restoration is really appreciable, and I thank CE and Sujitda for taking up this entire effort. So I'll be sharing the screen. So I'll be talking about I assume that the screen is visible.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So today I'll be talking about the. I'll just introduce the coastal and marine system to the people who are not very much aware about these critical ecosystems. Right. So the first thing is that why should we why should we learn? Why should we understand about the marine ecosystem, and why it is important? So the major thing is that the entire marine ecosystem, which comprises of the coastal region as well as the marine region, are a critical player in controlling the climate. So it is very important that to conserve this particular habitat. And next thing is that the food, it's not only a climate controller, but at the same time, it is also providing lots of livelihood opportunities for the coastal communities. And lots of bioactive compounds have been produced from the way.
Hello. I have joined, but I'm just trying my presentation.
Babanji, we will have to mute your mic, please.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. So lots of bioactive compounds are also extracted from the various marine species, including corals and seaweeds and seagrass. So it is also helping to produce lots of medicines for cancers, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and other sort of diseases. And lots of economy, the job opportunities are also associated with the ocean, especially tourism sector, the ports and harbors, the shipping industry. So lots of things are associated with this marine environment. So that is one of the reason why we have to kind of understand, and we have to kind of conserve this marine habitat. So another thing is that the marine system also have this kind of very critical habitats like mangroves, wetlands, coral reefs, etc., which are really important for the what is it, the protection of the land also. So I'll be talking about the importance of the mangroves and coral reefs in the shoreline protection also in the coming slides. So globally, if you look into the system, you can see that the highly productive marine habitats are within the tropical and subtropical regions. So you can see that from 30° north to 30° south, these are the region you will get the highly productive coastal and marine habitat. And you can see that India is in the northern hemisphere, and being in the tropical region, we have really good diversity of coastal and marine habitat, and also species, those who are living in these particular habitats. So just to start with, I would like to kind of tell that what is coastal zone, because generally if you talk about the marine system, we tend to feel that marine system or marine environment is the open ocean. So before that, we should understand that there is something called coastal zone. The marine system is not only comprised of the ocean or the open ocean, it also have a land counterpart. So we have to kind of factor in that, you know, the land is also part of the larger marine ecosystem. That's why we'll call it as a coastal zone. So in a simple word, we can say that the coastal zone is the place where the land meets the sea. And because you can see that land is very productive, the terrestrial region is very productive, and the marine region is very productive. If two productive, highly productive region merge together, obviously that particular region is going to be really highly productive. So it can be in the form of resources, or it can be in the form of other mineral resources also. I mean, the biological resources as well as non-biological resources also. And one more thing, it's that, why the South Asian region, the coastal and marine habitats of the Southeast Asian region is important. So the thing is that we have altogether 34 large marine ecosystem, out of which 2, the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, one is on the east coast and one is on the west coast, are in this particular region. We have the largest delta, the Ganges and the Indus, in this particular region, and we have one of the largest mangrove area, the Sundarban, that also falls in this particular region. We have one of the finest islands. We have the coral atolls in Lakshadweep and Andamans. And these critical habitats actually provide lots of opportunities, economic as well as other opportunities for the people who are living in these coastal communities. So now actually we can focus our attention to India, because as I told you, India is in the northern hemisphere in the tropical region, and it has lots of diverse coastal and marine habitats. So in a brief, I'll just quickly walk you through about the biogeographic zone of our country. So we have classified the biogeographic zone of the country into 10. But anyway, so most of the land share is on the terrestrial side. We only have 2 biogeographic zone on the coast, the marine side, that is number 8, which is on the coast, and the zone number 10, which is the islands. So fairly less represented in the form of biogeographic zone also. But you have to factor in that this is one of the largest area having high production. And if you look into the offshore area, if you look into from the land, if you slowly move towards the offshore area, towards the water, you can see that we have an exclusive economic zone of nearly 2.17 million kilometers square. So what does this mean? That from 200 nautical miles from the shoreline is the habitat which is available for the country of India to explore and utilize the resource, the marine resources. So it can be the biological resources, it can be the non-biological resources also, say like minerals, the manganese nodules, and all the other things. So India have a really large exclusive economic zone. Okay, so one of the major reason for this thing, because India is a peninsular country, so we have fairly good representation in the west coast as well as the east coast. And if you look into the entire coastline of the country, we have nearly 8,000 kilometers of the coastline. Along the west coast in the Arabian Sea, we have nearly 3,500 kilometers, and along the east coast, along the which is in the Bay of Bengal large marine ecosystem, we have nearly 4,500 kilometers. So now the thing is that we have 9 maritime states and 2 island territories along this area. And one important thing is that this coastline marine ecosystem of the country are also the development hub of our nation. So there are lots of ports, there are lots of activities, the developmental activities, which is directly contributing towards the GDP of our nation, are established along the coastal areas, say starting from Gujarat to West Bengal. But the challenge here is that this is the same area where the protected species, all the other large-bodied marine animals are also using. So you can always figure out that, okay, if one area is very prone to development, highly developed area, and if that the same area is utilized by the protected species or endangered species like whale shark, marine turtles, dolphins, or any other large-bodied marine animals, you can clearly make out that there can be some sort of conflict which is arising, right? So the larger thing is that we have to kind of to understand these kind of linkages and to kind of prepare accordingly. Now I'll just move towards the coastal and marine ecosystem. That is my larger topic to deal with today.
So you have another 5 minutes.
Let me see. I'll try to kind of finish it off quickly. Yeah. So basically we have I have segregated it into 2 sides. One is the landward side. So basically the sandy shores, the rocky shores, estuaries, and mangroves. And we also have towards the landward side certain habitats like seagrass meadows, coral reefs, open oceans, and deep sea. So you can see that I have highlighted mangroves and I have highlighted coral reefs, because these are the 2 ecosystems which are under tremendous pressure, and globally lots of restoration activities are happening in this particular region. So I will not be kind of talking about this particular thing. So I think because of the shortage of the time, so I'll quickly go to the ecosystems directly. So we have the sandy shores, because most of the time actually people really don't consider sandy shore as part of the marine ecosystem, but sandy shore is also the part of the coastal ecosystem. And these sandy shores are also the home for the endangered fauna like marine turtles. So it is very important to kind of conserve these kind of sandy shores. And next come the rocky shores. Rocky shore are also equally important, but it don't have much of aesthetic value or tourism value like the sandy shores. But there are lots of species are surviving in this particular habitats. And you will get to see coral reef also, corals also in this particular region. The third category is the estuaries. Estuaries is the place where the sea and the river meets, because it's 2 highly productive ecosystem meeting together. So this particular region are also very, very productive. So near to the estuaries, you have one of the finest ecosystem, one of the finest coastal ecosystem, we will call it as mangroves. Mangrove restoration is one of the major activities which is happening globally, and in India also we are doing lots of restoration of mangroves, probably all along the coast. So I think in coming days, more experts will be talking about the mangrove restoration activities of a country. So like that, we have mangroves as well as salt marshes. Basically, mangroves are the tropical, subtropical species, and salt marshes are mostly like the temperate species. Now, if you are slowly moving towards the seaward side, you can see that there are seagrasses, which are very important for the sea to stabilize the sand, and also important for the marine turtles as well. Then the next habitat will be coral reef. Again, coral reef is one of the highly threatened habitat, and also lots of restoration activities happening in the country as well as abroad as well. Then you slowly move to open ocean. You can see that almost like 80 to 85% of the species what we are seeing, the marine megafauna, the small species like Porpita, or Portuguese manopha. So lots of animals are also living in the open ocean. Then slowly moving to the depth of the ocean, there are again the diversity of the species are also high. But again, these are the depth. Deep sea is one of the least explored, so we really don't need to kind of worry. And the thing is, it's very difficult to kind of go to the restoration aspect as well. So the major challenge is that why do you want to kind of restore these habitats, right? So as I told you, mangrove habitats actually provide lots of opportunities for the communities, but at the same time, nearly 30 to 50% of the mangrove habitats globally have degraded lots due to anthropogenic activities. So that is one of the reasons why we have to kind of restore this habitat. Apart from that, as you know that mangroves are one of the largest carbon sequesters, so it can sequester more than 6 times of carbon dioxide. So restoring these kind of habitats are not only essential to kind of secure the livelihood of the communities or to kind of protect the shoreline, but at the same time it is also action to kind of mitigate the climate change. So again, if you go to the coral reef also, you will be able to kind of see that lots of tourism opportunities, income, everything is associated with this particular habitat. So I would like to kind of tell one particular thing, and I would like to kind of finish here. The thing is that these kind of habitats, so marine habitats, say like mangrove, seagrass, coral reef, etc., all are interconnected. The thing is that most of the time, actually, we really don't see in that particular angle. So we'll always see that mangrove as one standalone habitat, and seagrass and coral reef are separate, but it's not true. All the habitat, especially mangrove, seagrass, coral reef, all are interrelated. If you want to have a healthy coral reef, you have to have a healthy mangrove. So if the mangroves are degraded and you expect the coral reef to kind of do miracles, it will not happen. So if you have to have a healthy coral reef, to have healthy livelihood, to have a healthy fish stock, you have to have a healthy mangrove ecosystem. So I would like to conclude over here by saying this, that the restoration is very, very important, and all the habitats are interlinked. So you have to kind of keep that thing in mind, and while planning the ecological restoration. Thank you, Sujita.
Thank you, John. I think it was wonderful, and I'm sorry that I had to interfere into your presentation because of the time constraint. Yes, we will be having some questions coming from the participants. What I request, dear participants, is please type your questions in the chat box. We will take those questions, and then perhaps in the end of our both presentations, we will take these questions and request our resource persons to answer those questions. Yeah, I think we can move ahead with our next.
So you need to share your screen.
Mr. Jairaj, to please.
So,
Jairaj, please can you just share the slides? I just wanted to also inform all of our participants that Center for Environment Education has been working on the issues related to marine and coast for almost about now 30 years. We have experience of various projects implementation across the coastal area of the country, both East Coast, West Coast, and island ecosystems too. We have experience of working with the communities on issues related to climate literacy and marine litter management, post biodiversity conservation studies. We have undertaken various studies in terms of identifying the ecologically sensitive areas as part of the CRZ notification in Maharashtra, in Karnataka and Gujarat. We also have been involved in public consultations on issues, on related issues of Government of India and the state governments. One of the public consultations that we were actually involved in discussing the coastal regulation zone notification of 2011 notification that we did wide consultation among the fisher folk and other stakeholders who are concerned about coastal protections. Marine turtle conservation has been integral part of our coastal education and protection programs. Development of conservation and policy documents I have already spoken about. Me here in the state of Goa and other part of the coastal areas have been helping the state governments in developing policy related documents, and in the state of Goa we have been helping the coastal GCZMA in developing the marine turtle conservation plan for 4 nesting sites in the state of Goa. We were also part of disaster management. The CE, Center for Environment Education, is also a national host institution for blue flag. We are working in sustainable business and climate change issues. Training and capacity building has been our core strength. Public awareness is also a core strength that we have. Marine interpretation programs. We have done 2 major marine interpretation programs, one in Andaman Nicobar and also the Chilika Lake. Chilika perhaps is the first ever interpretation center in India, speaking about the coastal and marine wealth that we have all along the coastal areas. Marine camps we have a marine campsite in Bakor in Gujarat, where we basically take students to these camps and make them understand being with the nature and being with the coast, understand the coastal ecosystem much better. Next slide. Jairaj.
That's so.
What's up? Yeah, I wanted to speak about more on the coastal, the Blue Flag initiative that we have. The Government of India, through the Center for Environment Education, we have been part of identifying blue flag beaches, and these are internationally acclaimed beach awards given to few beaches who qualify environmental and social parameters. In the beginning last year, we are very happy to announce that we were able to get 8 of our beaches as a blue flag awarded beaches. That includes the Shivrajpur in Gujarat, Gogla in Diu, Kasaragod in Karnataka, Padubidri in Karnataka. We got two beaches in Karnataka, Kapad in Kerala, Radhanagar in Andaman Nicobar, and Rushikonda in Andhra Pradesh, Golden Beach, Puri in Odisha. So these beaches have been actually identified with a rigorous process of scrutiny. We have the national jury and international jury. This is very important programs that the CEA is involved in identifying and protecting our beaches, at the same time in ensuring that sustainable tourism activities are taken place without compromising on the integrity of coastal ecosystem and its ecosystem service values. So we have been involved in such activities for last 3 years. Utsav, next. Can I? Yeah. We also, as my colleague Madhvi told in the beginning, we have launched these 7 certificate courses on ecosystem restoration. As part of this, we also are planning to launch. We have launched a campaign called Act to Restore. Act to Restore is something which we want everyone to be part of it, understand the ecosystem and see what best as an individual can do better in order to restore the degraded ecosystems, as Sajan has also spoken about. And all of you know that most of these ecosystems that we have in India are degraded ecosystem. It is important that we basically restore them for future benefit, future prospect. At the same time, enhance the ecosystem service value of it. We want all of you to be part of this strengthen so that together we can actually achieve the restoration of ecosystem in this decade of ecosystem restoration. Ocean, of course, is a major ecosystem that plays a very important role, not just in terms of looking at the ocean as an ecosystem, but also it has greater ecosystems value. For example, most of us know that oxygen is very important. We all know that every second or third breath actually you take, the oxygen is actually coming from the ocean. That means ocean has a huge oxygen concentration. We are actually getting oxygen from these ocean and marine ecosystems. What we want you to look at is do a better choices. Choices are such that they are not they are helping restore the ecosystems. You also raise your voice in order, raising voice means now we are into internet era. Start campaign of internet campaign really gets together and discuss and understand these kind of things. So we have those campaigns. Now action is also very important. We all together can take an action. Next. To talk more about these Act to Restore campaign, may I request my colleague Madhavi Joshi to please take us through.
Just quickly to reiterate what Sujit was saying, it's that each one of us can take action at our I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Each one of us can take action at our individual and collective levels. We can make a choice, raise our voices, and take action for concerns we feel strongly about. And choices to make small and incremental changes to our lifestyles, taking a pledge to actually stick to it, and raising our voices to highlight a concern to appropriate authorities, creating and leading campaigns for amplifying the issues, then taking action to demonstrate positive change, being a conscientious citizen, joining others, working for the causes. These are just some examples of what we can do. We urge you to share your stories of change with us over email and tag us on social media using the hashtag Act to Restore. We also are announcing a challenge for the Coasts and Marine Ecosystems Month. We will be doing this every month. And basically, we are going to ask you to become a journalist and try your skills at writing articles, putting pictures, photographs, and making videos. The steps are also mentioned here. Basically identifying an issue of concern to highlight, carrying out the background research, interviewing people, and know enough about it to do a good story, and create your story using an article, photo, or video, and disseminate through the social media and mass media. Do share it with us at the link that has been given here. I request Arzu or someone, we can share it with you even later, but share the link with us on this, and also tag us wherever you can, whatever dissemination you're doing. Thanks, Sujit. We can go next.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now,
may I make an announcement, Sujit, for a minute? Just a second. I think we are going a little above time. So is that okay if we can extend the session by, say, about 15 minutes for everybody? I think we can.
So that's great. Thank you for Madhavi. And we will move to our next speaker. Next speaker is Dr. Baban Ingole, a great friend of mine. The association of CE and my personal association with Dr. Baban Ingole goes back to the year 1999. So where we met together and we started working on issues related to coastal ecosystem, especially taking through education and awareness programs. Dr. Baban Ingole is currently a visiting scientist with the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, WASCO, and he is a formerly chief scientist and head of biology division of the CSIR National Institute of Oceanography based in Donapala, Goa. Dr. Baban Ingole has 40 years of research and training and teaching experience at the level of PG and PhD level. He is a leader. He has written more than 200 research articles in a popular journal, and also part of developing environment impact assessment reports for more than 45 major projects in India and abroad. He has participated in 3 Antarctic expedition, discovery expedition, and visited 27 countries in the world. He is also a member of National and International Research Advisory Committee. He's guiding PhD students in 5 universities, including Goa, Trichy, Hyderabad, Kolhapur, and Acer. His publications are a lot of publications that he has to his credit. 250 research publication, citation. If you look at citation, almost over 4,000 citations that he has. He is also honorary position in various national and international science academies. To name few, he is a fellow with Maharashtra Academy of Science, Academy of Environmental Biology. He is also a life member of Indian Science Congress. So he is also a member of various technical and advisory committee. To name, he was a member of Maharashtra Coastal Zone Management Authority for 2 terms. So he has been involved in research, education, training, work along the coastal areas and the marine area. And also he has been recently involved in exploration of these deep sea minerals. He's traveling across the globe in identifying these deep sea minerals and doing research. Without taking much of time, may I request Dr. Ingole, please go ahead with your presentation. Professor Ingole?
Yeah. I'm just trying to share my screen. Is it visible? My screen is visible or not?
No.
No, sir.
And also, Dr. Baban Ingole is speaking about marine heritage, Angria Bank as a case study. I wish to inform you that there are very few people who have actually worked on Angria, and Dr. Baban Ingole was the first people who have actually ventured into Angria and studied that area very in detail.
Is it visible? My screen?
Yeah, visible.
Okay.
Just a full screen.
I'm very sorry. I had some issue immediately with since for morning in our area there is a power maintenance going on, and I was working on my desktop. My presentation updated was on desktop, and all of a sudden light went. I could not save it the updated version. Then I switched it to the laptop, and because of the fluctuation, my laptop stopped working. Fortunately, I had earlier version on my hard disk, and now I'm using my son's laptop. So please bear with me. Somehow I managed to fill the gap. So my few earlier slides which I was supposed to give an introduction is not there, and in any case there is not much time as I can see it from the organizers. What I would like to compliment Dr. Sujit and the full team of CEE for organizing this course. I think so it is a very good, wonderful opportunity to get youngsters motivated towards the ecological restoration. It is a need of the hour in overall and marine, specifically in the marine, because the marine habitats are being exposed for different type of stress. That includes the human beings intervention, the maximum or interference for that point is. What I intend to do is share with my little bit experience what we had a couple of years back, and this is with relation to the this course, not only the course but overall marine conservation. We know it that India has got a vast coastline and we have the coastal heritage sites. Few of those heritage sites are well known. For example, we have in Gujarat, Dwarka, near Okha, which is one of the area which is a lot of exploration has been done, and it is called the lost city of Mahabharata. And NIO has done a lot of work on the exploration and discovery of Dwarka. Then Mumbai, your Elephant Islands and the area down in Goa. Then Kerala coast, particularly, and then East Coast, Tanjore. We have Sujit mentioned a little bit about the Chilka. Orissa is one of the another area, particularly if you go back to the old history. So there are a lot of areas around the coast which are Mahabalipuram, not to mention forget Tamil Nadu coast. Again, both Dwarka and Mahabalipuram are directly linked with the Mahabharata, and there are the evidences which we recovered. I did a lot of work, and presently also going on working on these aspects, particularly archaeological findings of certain areas. As far as my presentation is concerned, I'm going to talk to you about a recent discovery of the Angria Bank on the west coast of India. And some of you must have heard, you must have seen it. Maybe it is already available on YouTube, but I will share it with Sujit also about the documentary which I prepared it for the Ministry of Environment and Forest a couple of years back, and that is going to be very important document for India's presentation at the international forum, where we are supposed to preserve the 10% of our coast and as a marine protected area. And Angria Bank is going to be very soon declared as India's first offshore marine protected area. Ministry of Environment and Forest is working for that, and NIO has played a very important role in gelling the information required for that purpose. And I was leading that group when I was in NIO. And these are the few slides with respect to that. I thought I will share it with you and let you know that what is there for youngsters to do in future. So here you can see that.
Can you just
yeah.
put slideshow mode so that
Sure, sure, I will do it. I'll do it. Is it okay?
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah. So as you can see that here is Malvan, Goa is down somewhere here, Mumbai is off here. So between Goa and Mumbai is a Malvan, and Malvan is one of the tourist destination on west coast of India. Almost every year more than 4 to 5 lakh tourists visit there, and specifically it is important because there is a coral reef just on in the intertidal area. This is one of the area where, other than the Lakshadweep, Andaman and Gulf of Mannar, where you have intertidal area, coral reefs are there. There are patchy reefs, but there are coral reefs, and there is good attraction for the people. So from Malvan, if we can take roughly around 100 nautical miles, we have the place. It is submerged bank. It is called, here you can see that it is actually perpendicular to the Vijayadurg, again another fort, historic fort city. Malvan also is historic, but Vijayadurg is a historic fort city. During Shivaji era, Vijayadurg was very active, and around the Vijayadurg there are shipyards of those 16th century, where maritime work in India was at peak, and they were operating from Vijayadurg. A ship were brought here, warships were brought here for servicing, and there is a dockyard available here. There is a literature available, indicates that Shivaji's navy was very active in this area, and they were known as very good warrior. One of their admiral was Kanoji Angre, and he died fighting with the Britishers and other invaders, and they were using this area for anchoring their boats during that time, and he died. And therefore, in honor of Kanoji Angre, this submerged bank, which was 1,000 years back, was an island exposed, but in due course of time, because of the sea level rise, it is now submerged, and therefore these banks, these are the coral banks, almost around 800 square kilometer area, and this is the area which is named with this to respect the Kanoji Angre's. This area, as I told you, is between Goa and Mumbai, perpendicular directly from the Vijayadurg, was not subjected for systematic scientific studies till 2013-14. There are few visits sporadic by some research and fisheries vessels in this area. They did the sampling also, both from geological and biological point of view. Apart from that, not much was known about the corals presence in this area. We, under the Ministry of Environment and Forest, we received grants from UNDP grants. I made a presentation, couple of presentations, both at Mumbai, Delhi, and finally we secured some funds, because doing the research, particularly in the offshore area, oceanography is an expensive affair, and it is so close to the Indian coast, although it is beyond 12 nautical miles. However, very close to Malvan, which is a tourist destination, and Mumbai, as I told you. So what we did this area is, we did 15 days cruise, specifically 5 days was a scuba diving, underwater scuba diving survey. We went with a team of scuba divers and did the detailed bathymetric survey first with the ship, and then selected the points for the research. This was the phase 1 expedition. We did it in January 2014. Main objective was, or first phase was to study the biodiversity, ecology of corals and the associated flora and fauna, to classify the various ecological habitat, and prepare the monograph and documentary, as I mentioned it, which is already available on YouTube in public domain. So this is how we did the survey first, because there were no maps available of the area except the navigational map of Admiral charts. But then we did the detailed bathymetric and found out how the bathymetry changes from deeper water, the shallow water, and where are the red zones are, as you can see that these are the shallows. So we have between 20 to 40 meter was the shallowest range in the area, and that was on the plateau here. As you can see that these were the selected points for the diving and other sampling area. As you can see that these are star is the diving area and the sampling, so they are combined area. We did detailed bathymetric and oceanographic study, detailed using different various standard equipments. Diving was done it, as you can see that our main ship, then we use a small boat for the supply vessel, and diving was done with the rubber dinghy. And these are the actually observations which we did it underwater using the what we found that first time there are more than 200 different species we collected during that time, and information photograph. Out of that, around 60 were the corals, around 50 hard coral, and roughly around 10 soft coral. So most important is the coral habitat into that one, and we mapped that area in detail. Other than the corals, there are rich biodiversity of echinoderms, crustaceans, fishes, and all other forms what we have got it, mollusks. These are some of those already available in the public domain. Report is submitted to the UNDP and Government of India, as well as the documentary one. So these are some of the kind of, you can see that brittle stars, group of brittle stars, then crabs, 20 species of different crabs we have collected. Some of them are new records, could be some of them could be the new species, but we have got it. Shrimps, different type of shrimps and crustaceans. Polychaetes, one of the which other than the corals, this is the group which was highly diverse, and we did get it some new species from this area. Mollusk, as I was telling, about shells and shellless mollusk. This area, crustaceans, fishes, particularly fish larvae, and other groups, coral associated fishes, specifically very rich coral associated fishery. And other than the coral associated fishes, we do have dolphins, sharks, and sometimes whales as a visitor to the area. They use it because of the shallow. They do use it, that area, for the resting during their long migration journey. Seaweeds, around 30 species of seaweeds, different types, including the seagrass we collected from shallower waters, particularly sandy zones, as you can see somewhere like this. We do have the rocky, sandy areas or mixed areas in this. There are some of the areas which are very groups which are very important. As I was mentioning, there is a sponge which is called a barrel sponge. It is huge, like oil barrel, 100-liter oil barrel size of sponge. Different type of sponges are given it here. Of course, also different type of microscopic forms, meioforma forms, which we collected. I was mentioning about you the new species, what we have got it from this area, or new records. These are some of the species which we got it, polychaete species, echinoids. Then we have Platyhelminthes collected from this area. They probably are the new species. We are working on that one for describing, because they are molecular studies suggested that they could be the new species, and that is how we are working on that, using the both morphological molecular techniques to describe these species. These are the ecological status of different species, particularly coral species found from this area, coral and echinoderms in this area. So most of the species, as you can see, that are not threatened, but there are some species which are data deficient and which sometimes probably endemic to those areas, and therefore we'll need more studies on those areas. We did the habitat mapping using GIS platforms, and found out which area are seagrass area, where are the coral areas, which needs to be conserved and preserved in future. This is an example of what we did it in Grand Island. Similar studies we did it to find out where are the corals, where are hard corals, where are rocks, where are microalgae, which are the areas high in diversity. In the future, we plan to conduct more detailed expeditions using the modern tools, specifically if we can use the ROVs, which is available with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, where I am working presently. We are planning to take the ships in future and use the modern techniques other than the divers, because divers have the limitations to go only up to the maximum 40-45 meters with the compressed air. Otherwise, we'll have to take the mixed gases, which is again risky and expensive in the open air, open water, and therefore it is advisable to go with the modern tools and gears. What we do have it in India, and we should be using it in future, because this is the area which is going to be not only important from the tourism purpose, because it is approachable from both Malvan, Ratnagiri, and Mumbai for scuba diving and offshore tourism, but it is important in terms of the biodiversity hotspots, and we need to preserve those areas from the conservation point of view. So we are planning to use some of the modern tools in coming days and hope to get more information and data. This is the ROV we used during the discovery expedition during the tsunami in 2005, and we hope to get it such ROVs in India very soon, and we will have our own ROVs to be used in not only in Angria Bank but in other areas also. Thank you for your attention and also support from UNDP, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, Sarang Kulkarni specifically, and Vasudevan sir for their support, and of course CSIR. Thank you for your attention. This is what I wanted to share it with you.
Thank you, Dr. Ingole. It was so wonderful.
Sorry, I was a little bit hurry because the time I was knowing that you have limited time allotted to me. So I hope I have come within that.
No, I think it's a good one because it is basically kind of a booster dose for people to actually learn something and explore in detail later. Because we are planning to start this course, a 1 month certification course, where we will have 4 modules. The first module is today, talking about general, introduction to coast and marine. Then we have 3 more modules lined up. So I think greater understanding of all these things that you have spoken about shall be spoken later. And we also have planning to, we also would like the students to actually, see some of the videos on their own, do a lot of assignments so that, it is kind of a collaborative learning happens actually. Now we can go for question and answers. Utsav, can you just see how many questions we have, and we can take up 1 or 2 questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. First of all, it was very fantastic and fruitful discussion and meeting we have. And first question we have received for Mr. Rajan John, which is from Raghav Gupta, Mr. Raghav Gupta, and he asked us that is there any similar process underway for seagrass and a coral restoration?
Can we ask Sajan? Sajan, can you?
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm very much
yeah.
clear only. Yeah. So I think the question is that mangroves are there any restoration for seagrasses
Yes.
and corals, right?
Coral,
Yes,
Yes, yeah. So mangrove restoration is fairly easier. So that is one of the reasons why almost all the coastal states are doing the mangrove restoration. So the coral restoration is little difficult. So only the states which are having the coral reef are doing restoration activities. In Gujarat, in Gulf of Kutch, there is a restoration activities going on, which I am also part of it. Then in Gulf of Mannar, a few organizations are doing, I think in Maharashtra, and little bit of work in Andamans as well. But seagrass restoration works are underway, but it's too complicated. So if you look into the what is the scale of how easy to tough, mangroves are fairly easier, then comes coral, then comes seagrass. Seagrass are little difficult to restore. So restoration activities are going on in our country.
Dr. Ingole, you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with Sajan. Yeah, restoration of coral reef and seagrass, although can be done, but it is not easy. And restoration is possible only for some certain species. You cannot do for all the species restoration also. Moreover, restoration will depend on local factors in the area, and therefore it is a long process, expensive process, but it is possible to do it. There are already efforts being done at different places: Gulf of Mannar, Lakshadweep, Andaman, in Malvan, these and also Gulf of Kutch. Efforts are there, and there are good positive results of the restorations. Bleaching, somebody was asking. Yes, bleaching is another very important phenomena, and it is happening quite often, and the frequency is increasing nowadays. Climate change is one of the important factor, but also again local pollutions is adding to the. We have found it in Malvan and in Goa, both the areas. Corals are very close to the coast and also exposed to the local pollution conditions, particularly sewage and industrial pollution. and that is adding to the climate change. So there is a double, impact on this, and therefore bleaching is happening quite often. Thank you.
Yeah. One
Thank
more
you.
question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. One more question is coming from on the same topic, that if any project applying to save marine or sea life animals by the government of India.
Yeah, Dr. Baban Ingole, I think.
Yeah, to the Dr. Baban Ingole. The same question is coming from the Khurshid Sheikh, that is there any project applying to save marine or sea life animals by government of India?
Yes, we do have it, some, flagship programs for saving the marine organisms. Specifically to mention, I can mention in Gujarat, we have got the Health Shark project, which is, very well taken by the local fishermen communities. Participation is there in that. And second is the turtle restoration and conservation in the Orissa. Again, both local and government agencies, I'm sure CE is involved in both these programs about the conservation of these organism. Third one is all along the coast. It is again Forest Department is coordinating. It is about the marine standing, different marine organism, including the whales, including the sharks, whales, turtles, and other organisms which are trapped into the fishing or ghost nets or other fishing nets. And wherever it is possible, there are the guards available all along the coast. Forest Department have deployed different persons to rescue those organisms and release into their natural habitats. So I'm aware about all these three programs, and it is quite effectively being implemented.
Thank you, Dr. Ingole. I think I'll one more question, which is very important, which I like. I would ask Sergeant to answer. The question has actually come from Rinku Das. She says, "What is the connection between mangrove, seagrass, and coral reef?" Sergeant?
Yeah. So this entire connection is very complex because the mangrove is an ecosystem, the seagrass itself is an ecosystem, and the coral reef is an ecosystem, right? So basically, if you see, the thing is that the mangroves will act as the filters, and they will almost like filter most of the debris and the pollutants from the land, which is coming from the landward side, and it will filter, and only the good nutrient are reaching the seagrass. The seagrass will further refine, or what is further refine these nutrients, and then it will slowly pass into the coral reefs. So basically, this connection, the linkage between these habitats are, yeah, in another way, that if there are lots of activities or lots of pollutants which is coming from the seaward side, that basically the corals and seagrass will prevent entering the coast. They'll filter it before entering the mangrove. So the connection is very, very intricate. The thing is that you won't be able to kind of clearly tell this thing in simple words. It's very complex because these are ecosystems.
Sujit, I would like to add a little bit into that one.
Yeah,
Just supplement what Sajan has mentioned it, and the question was, simple word I can say it: mangrove, seagrass, and coral reefs are the habitat stabilizer. All three stabilize the habitat, and also they are the one which help the biodiversity to colonize. So all these are the hotspots. All three are the hotspots of the biodiversity. They help the associate flora and fauna, and therefore corals, seagrass, and mangroves, wherever they are there, the diversity is highest among the other areas. So this is what I would like to add into that.
Thank you, and I'm sorry. I think we may not be able to take more questions because we are running out of time. So now uh, we are coming to an end of this particular webinar. So basically, if at all, if you have any feedback, it is a request to all the participants. If you have any feedback, kindly write to us. You can put it in the chat box. How you like this program, and what are your suggestions in order to make this program more effective, in order to make this program more participatory, so that many people can be part of it, in order to achieve the desired goal. Dr. Ingole, there is one question has come. How do we contact you? Is it possible? Can I share your email ID so that she can contact you?
You can share my email as well as mobile to anyone. I'll be happy to
Thank you.
get back to them.
So we will share his number and email ID in the chat box. You may kindly contact. The future action, what we are also looking at is, so this is the first webinar. It's a general webinar where all the participants are part of this particular webinar. Our next 3 modules in marine and coastal module, we will be having a separate registered participants. Only those registered participants will be part of next module. Next module will be talking about restoration. It will be talking about the deep ocean life and coasting along the coastal area of India. The next lecture will be taken by Dr. Deepak Apte, former director of BNHS. He will be speaking about that thing. So from next module onwards, we will be having more of an academic kind of a flavor, where we make a presentation and request participants to see some videos. We will also be giving you all the resources, literature, so that you can go through that. And every Saturday, 4 to 5, there will be lectures, and during the week times, we expect the participants to spend at least 3 to 4 hours in seeing the videos or reading the popular articles. We will also be giving the questionnaire so that you can read those or see the videos and try and answer those questions that we are posing. So it will be more of an academic flavor, but it's not purely academic, but also you are also looking at the field realities, reading and discussing among your own fellow colleagues. So this is what the module that we are actually looking at. And from next week onwards, also we will be having the other modules starting. What my colleague Madhavi said, we will subsequently also talk, starting other modules related to forest and those ecosystem restorations modules are concerned. In order to conclude this session, may I now request to my colleague Madhavi to say a few words and concluding remarks.
On behalf of the CE Academy, I would like to thank Mr. Sarjan John and Dr. Bhavan Ingole for very, very interesting sessions. I wish we really had more time and we could have heard you in more detail, but I think we will come back to you and trouble you for some more detailed kind of interactions with our participants. I hope you wouldn't mind that. It's been a learning experience for a lot of us. And I think that we're getting responses from the participants that the sessions have been very interesting. And I'm sure they will learn, go back quite motivated and charged to actually work further on this course. I want to thank all the participants who joined us and for this webinar today, and also urge those who have not registered to kindly go to our registration link. So let's put that in the chat box. Maybe you should put it again if people have not, it has not registered with people. So let's we would really love to have more people joining the course with us. And as Sujit was saying, it is going to be academic, but it is also going to be a lot of sharing of experiences. We would also love, we do have a range of participants already who are not only coming from colleges, but we do have people who are in the field and people who have experience. And so therefore, it adds value to the course where we also learn from you. So it would be an interactive sessions henceforth. For the next 3 sessions, they will be in a classroom kind of a mode where we will be doing having an expert, but also or a practitioner share their work, but also do a lot of sharing with you and getting to know you better. So look forward to everybody joining and do register. And thank you for this wonderful first start of the course today. I just want the panelists to please put them videos on so that we can take a photograph together.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think, yeah, thanks so much to all the participants and to all the panelists and to the tech team and to all the creative team which has worked in, you won't see them, but they have helped us do a lot of back-end kind of work. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and thanks to all the participants.
And also thanks to my colleagues, Utsav, Jairaj, Sanskriti, and all who have actually put this program together. Thank you very much.